Yo, what's good, everybody? And thank you for tuning in to another Tyler Perry Sistas review. If this is your first time coming to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning family member, then you already know what it is and what it always will be. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Tell somebody to tell somebody if you choose to. But if not, just sit back, relax while we get into this messy, well, not so messy thing. So if you looked at the thumbnail, you saw that it was entitled Sister Talk. And for those who are new, Sister Talk are videos that I do when people send me an email or a message through social media. And if I think that their questions or part of our conversation would be great talking points for a video, then that's what I'll do. So this is what this is. And so I'm going to read you what this particular fan sent to me, and you can see it on the screen as well. It says, "Hey, Allie, I miss Preston. I thought Danni was her best self with him. I'm not feeling Tony. I think he's a step down from Preston. I want him to come back to the show. Who do you prefer Danni with? I know she's not your favorite character, but do you think she deserves love?" And let me just tell y'all, whether I agree with what you say or not, I do appreciate you taking the time to send me a message, because I do read all of them. I really do. So I thank you for that. So, but when it comes to me in my house, I do not miss Preston. I do not want Preston back on the show. I want Preston to stay where he is. And I do understand that as an audience, we were introduced to Preston, I believe, in season 1 of Sistas. So I recognize that there is a familiarity with him because he was such a prominent figure on the show as it pertained to Danni. And then we began to see how Tyler Perry began to write for Preston to have a certain dynamic with the character of Zach. However, when it comes to Preston's dynamic with Danni, I just was never here for it, really, because I felt like Preston, even though he may have genuine concern for Danni, he used to do too much of the ghosting for me. And I understand that maybe he wasn't sure how to handle a situation, but I'd much rather you be present and mess up than to ghost me and leave me wondering, or leave me to my own devices and leave me to my own thoughts and creating up narratives that may not be true, because you won't communicate, because you won't respond back to me, because you won't answer the phone when I call. And I don't know if people remember that, but in the beginning, that's exactly what Preston did. And not only that, Preston did not respect Danni, in my opinion, because there is one thing, because the fans love to bring up how Aaron would pop up and they didn't like that he popped up, but didn't have an issue with not only Preston popping up to Danni's house, but he would actually be in her house, and homeboy didn't have a key, but he would get in because the landlord would let him in. And I remember I thought to myself, well, why is she letting this man in to Danni's apartment when Danni's not home? He's not on a lease. Are you doing this because he's white? And I guarantee you wasn't letting Zach up in there, and you damn sure ain't letting Tony up in Danni's spot when she's not home. So why was it okay for Preston to do that? So him being white is all that I could come up with, because she ain't letting no brothers up in there. You feel me? Now, I understand that people do not like Tony, and I get it. If I had to make a choice as to who I prefer Danni with, honestly, I don't prefer Danni with anybody, because the same things that Danni was doing to Preston is the very same thing that she is doing to Tony. Is Tony perfect? Absolutely not. Does Tony always handle a situation how I would want my man to handle a situation? Absolutely not. But I believe that Tony's intent is always pure. I believe it always comes from a genuine place. And that's just my opinion. Some people may disagree, and you can put it in the comments if you do. But that's just where I'm coming from. Now, when it comes to Danni's relationship with Tony, one of the red flags to me was when, I believe it was when season 7 came back on, and we had the time jump. And Tony and Danni had been dating for 3 months. Now, of course, at this time, they're having sex. They are being intimate. However, Danni was not made aware that Tony was in therapy. And so for me, I said, wait a minute. You've been dating this woman for 3 months. You guys are in a committed relationship, yet you don't know that your man goes to therapy. that is a conversation that happens within the first 5 dates. That topic of discussion comes up, at least for me. At least for me and my friends, that is something that comes up whether you're in therapy, whether you're seeking counseling elsewhere, whether you've had spiritual counseling, however, whatever counseling that you have, maybe you don't believe in therapy. However, it's a conversation that tends to be had. So for Danni not to know that Tony was in therapy was a red flag to me. One thing I do appreciate about the character of Tony is that he does have a genuine concern for Danni's mental health. And that is something that I like. It's not performative. It's not something that he's doing to show or deem himself as better than Danni, but he recognized that Danni has vices. He recognized that there are certain things that Danni will do in order to deflect in dealing with things that she just really needs to deal with. Not only does she deflect, she projects as well. And we're seeing that more and more as season 8 is playing out. And when Danni had her panic attack, it went from her blaming Tony to not blaming Tony. But the one thing that she did say, and she has been consistently saying, is that Tony is a trigger for her. And my thing is, if this man is triggering you so badly, then why are you with him? That's how I feel. Number one, I believe Danni is lying. I don't believe that Tony triggers her in any way. I believe that Tony is a mere indication of things that Danni needs to deal with. And no one has really placed her in a position to deal with herself. Her friends really don't do it. Or when they attempt to do it, she tells them that they are judging her. She begins to point out the inconsistencies or things that they may be doing in their lives when it has everything to do with the spotlight being on Danni. So it's interesting when she wants the spotlight on her and when she doesn't. If the spotlight is going to reveal her blemishes and her shortcomings and her inconsistencies, she doesn't want it on her. But if the spotlight is on her to deal with a man, to be compelling to a man, she wants that type of spotlight on her. So with Danni, and, even the last question when it comes to, do I believe that she deserves love? I don't want to say she doesn't deserve love, but what I will say is the type of love that Tony is trying to give her, I don't believe that Danni is in a position to receive it, because she's definitely not in a position to reciprocate it. So why should this man continue to shower you, be there for you, give you this type of love when you're unable to give it back? I don't even know if Danni wants to give it back. The things that Tony may want out of life, Danni has never said she wanted those things. I don't know if Danni wants to get married. She talks about children as if she doesn't want them herself. So I'm not sure how to sit in that space with the character of Danni. Now, you said that you believe that Tony is a step down from Preston. I believe he's a step up. I honestly believe he's a couple of steps up from Preston, in my opinion. Things with Preston began to take a turn for me when he began to, I'm not going to say when he began, when he gave Danni the ultimatum that if she didn't marry him, he was going to go and marry Mindy. And my thing is, how are you going to force someone to marry you when you have not been carrying yourself as a husband to begin with? And I think that's the thing. Some people think, well, when I ask her to marry me, or when I, propose, or when we become married, then I'll start acting like that. No. If you haven't been showing me that you're capable of being a husband before I say I do, that's, for me, for Allie, that's a problem. Because you're not going to say I do and then magically become a husband. You're not going to say I do and then magically become committed, magically become faithful. It doesn't work that way. If you're not already placing the stumbling blocks or the building blocks in your relationship to be those things, or just who you are as an individual, it's not magically going to happen when you say I do. So the fact that Preston even said something like that to Danni, I was all the way turned off from him, because who the hell are you to force me to marry you when we're not even in that place right now? And I think that Preston brought up marriage one time before, and you could tell that Danni was not into it. Because like I said, I don't even believe that's what she wants. So for me, Tony is an upgrade from Preston. He really is, because Preston just never did it for me. Preston just never did it for me. And then when Preston started playing those games, letting Zach get into his head, dating other women, taking them to Danny's favorite spots so that Danny could see him with other women. Why are we playing these games? Y'all knocking on 40 door. Why are we doing this? So for me, Preston just started doing things that was just turning me off of his character and being a potential anything to Danny. Now, if we remember correctly, when Danny decided to be in a committed relationship with Preston, it was so weird because it went from her like not really want anything to do with him to all of a sudden she just had to be committed. I want us to be together. When did that happen? And then the heifer couldn't even stay faithful 24 hours because now you out with Tony and Rich and Jordan, y'all having a triple date. And now you're considering the fact that, hey, you may have met a black man that you may have an interest in when just the day before you done told Preston that you wanted it to be him and only him. So it's kind of hard because Danny says one thing, but her actions prove otherwise. And to me, I've always lived by that motto that your actions speak louder than words. That's how I personally feel, because you could say something you do, it's totally different and they just don't line up. And Danny is a character whose words and actions just don't line up. And so now she's with Tony and now she is having moments of reflection where I think Danny is beginning to recognize herself for who she really is. And she doesn't want to take responsibility and accountability about the things that she does. So it's easier to say, oh, he's the reason. He triggers me. He does this. Is it really him, Danny? Or is it you? I believe it's the latter. I believe it's Danny. But I do, like I said, I do recognize that people like Preston or want Preston back. I don't want to see him on Sistas. Him being on Zatima is enough for me. And I don't like him hardly too much over there either. But I'm just saying, I love seeing Trinity, but Preston's character, the more and more I sit with him as a character, I'm like, no, I ain't feeling him too much. I am not feeling him at all. But with all the women on the show, but more specifically Danny, because that's who this fan asked about, I want Danny to experience love. But most importantly, I want Danny to love herself. I want Danny to be in a position that when the type of love that comes and makes us feel, I'm not going to say whole because we should already be whole, but the type of love that comes and adds to our lives, we should be able to reciprocate that. We should be able to give that type of love to the man that's given us what he's given us. And Danny is just not in that place. Will she ever be in the place before the show ends? I don't know. Hopefully we get a chance to see it. But judging by this girl's track record, I wouldn't hold my damn breath. I just wouldn't hold my breath. I just wouldn't hold my breath. And so to those who have made it to the end of this video, which I meant to say in the beginning, Sister Talk is like a different type of vibe. It's more calm, more mellow, and just more real. And just talking about the show from a perspective of I can understand how certain things are away. But just because I understand it doesn't mean that it should remain that way. And I'm sure that a lot of us, including myself and some of you who may be listening to me, have been in relationships that have been unbalanced. And unfortunately with Sistas, we see that a lot. We see it with Zach and Fatima. We definitely see it with Tony and Danny. It is a very unbalanced relationship. Tony gives from such a, in my opinion, he gives from such a vulnerable place and such a place of intentionality. And Danny doesn't do that. Danny is more of a combative type of situation. And no one wants to go to work all day and then come home to their spouse or their partner and have to deal with that. Like, I just don't understand it. Even with Tony, I don't understand why he's with Danny. I don't understand what Danny gives him. I don't understand what Danny does to make him feel great about himself. Like, everything is it just breeds difficulty. It just breeds challenges. So I'm not sure why he's there. I would like to know. Maybe it can make some type of sense to me. But as of now, I don't understand why he wants to be with her. I don't understand why he wants to be her soft place. I don't understand why he wants to be that place for her to land. I have no idea. Now, if they want to talk about something, talk about that, because that's what I need clarity on as a viewer. But I do thank you for sending this in. I really appreciate it, because I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way that you do. And no, Danni is not my favorite character for many reasons. It has nothing to do with the way that she treats men. It has everything to do with the way Danni treats the women in her life, the so-called best friends and sisters in her life. But that's a whole nother video for a whole nother time. But until then, I would like to thank you guys for listening. Until next time, I will holler at y'all later, and y'all be safe out there.